So I'm here with an awesome guest today. His name's Gabriel Napora. He's a Hollywood producer. He's worked on incredible films like The Kindergarten Teacher with Maggie Gyllenhaal, The Informer with Joel Kinnaman, who's a badass actor, and Skin, which is based off of the Oscar-winning short. And he's just done a ton of credits, a ton of awesome movies. And so I'll jump right in. I'll let him introduce himself and give a little background about himself.
I'm Gabriel, CEO of Electric Panda Entertainment. I'm in film production, film finance. Been doing film for 24 years now, which dates me a little bit, but very excited to be on here with you and excited to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I think it's perfect timing to have someone like you on board because there's so many actors and so many filmmakers right now who, with the pandemic, feel a little bit lost and uncertain about where things are going to go. A lot of jobs were put on hold. Anyone in the entertainment industry, actually, not just filmmakers and actors, but it's kind of gone across the board. So, I'd love to just jump right in and ask you a more specific kind of question on how do you find this pandemic has affected film now and will in the future? And then a tag-on question to that, which is, what can people do right now during the pandemic to take use of this time to still be productive?
Okay, so depending on where you are in the pandemic and what side of the equation you're on, if you're in physical production, obviously physical production is halted pretty much throughout the pandemic. Nobody knows exactly what regulations everyone's going to come back with and that sort of thing. We're in film development and finance, so we've actually been busier than we've ever been. We've developed a lot of projects during the pandemic. We're funding a project right now that's about to go right at the end of the pandemic. And the other thing is we got very lucky before this all went down that we had finished 3 films, and those 3 films turned out to be very good films and now have significant interest for the reason that everybody is devouring content right now, and the streaming networks, as well as like every network, needs more and more and more and will need more as this is finishing off inevitably. So we're in a pretty good position in terms of that. If you're a physical producer, like somebody who's working on set or physical crew or an actor, unfortunately, you're probably waiting till things open up a little bit. That doesn't mean that there's not things that you can do, which I think was the second part of your question is what can you do in this pandemic to, what was it, keep busy, or what was your second question?
Or at least to create opportunities for yourself, whether that's, like some actors are just going on YouTube and creating a ton of content now because
right.
I'm off. Like Kevin James has really kind of blown up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious. But that kind of stuff, like what advice would you give to people in the industry, both actors, because I'd imagine there's definitely going to be actors who watch, and filmmakers to still advance their career or at least maintain it something so that they don't feel kind of stuck at this time?
Sure. Well, I think the most important thing in general is you do have to create content. Whatever side of the equation you're on, whether you're an actor, producer, director, almost in any position, the best thing you can do right now is gain a new skill set and create content. The demand for content, regardless of where you're posting, whether that's on YouTube, whether you're going to get a film off the ground right after this and try and get it on Netflix or whatever the scenario is the highest it's ever been. And I think if you do something enough, if you create enough videos in a certain way that's branded, people will take notice eventually. That might be 100 videos, that might be 10 videos, that might be 2 videos. Some people have gotten extremely lucky off of a couple videos that have gone viral right away. But I think whether you're, locked in your house or your backyard or you're out and about in your city, everybody can create content because everybody has cell phones. Cell phones are able to create dynamic content with great video and great audio, and there's really no excuse not to.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice because I think a lot of people are just kind of hanging around and waiting, and it doesn't take much to produce content, nowadays, especially like you said, with a cell phone. And in a worst case scenario, not that many people see it. That's the worst case scenario.
And you get better at your craft is the other thing. I mean, I'm not an actor, but conceivably being on camera, being more comfortable being on camera, and then also learning the skill set of what a producer does and what a director does, even if you're a one-man team and you're creating that for yourself, will, I believe, only add depth to your work once you're back on set on a real level, and an understanding even more so of how things work behind the scenes. It just makes you more valuable as an individual to any given production.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. On that note, kind of touching on that, how do you see film changing this point forward? I mean, we already see the kind of hit that theaters have been taking even prior to Corona. And now, especially with Corona, it seems like theaters are kind of just a dead industry by and large, except for, the major mega movies.
Sure.
So the film industry in general, how do you see, do you think there's going to be health guidelines moving forward for many years? Auditioning is going to be different, all that stuff. Just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think on a physical level, like actually getting on set again, you're going to hear many different proposals from many different companies on how it's going to work. So, I mean, I've heard everything from, a scenario where there's going to be an expert on set dealing with COVID-related issues, to physically distancing minimum 6.5 feet for every actor. So if you're in a scene with, you're doing a love scene, they have to find a way to do the love scene without you kissing and with you staying 6 feet away from, your co-star, which makes it very, very hard to do action, to do love, to do almost even just to interact. And you can cheat a lot of stuff, but it doesn't make it easy. And then you also add in the fact that there's probably going to be segmenting of each group on set. So like the art department can no longer be by the camera department. The camera department can't go too close to the lighting and grip department. There's going to be, it's almost going to be, I think, chaos in the beginning until those restrictions either like end or somebody finds a way to do it where there's a little more give and take, where you can actually shoot compelling footage. For us, the primary thing is probably testing. If we can, because we're a film finance company, we can shoot anywhere in the world and we would rather shoot with less restrictions and more testing so we can get compelling films and television versus like a ton of restrictions and maybe less testing, because I think the end result may be the same.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do widespread testing and everybody's clear to come on set, and you're in an area that's pretty confined, not having people come and go too much, our theory is you're probably okay.
That's what some studios are doing now. Tyler Perry, he's bringing people on set. He's making them test when they get there, keeping them there for 3 weeks, all the series regulars. And then after 3 weeks, they're allowed to shoot together and they're not allowed to leave the studio. He has like his own hotel there and everything. And that's kind of how he's doing it. He's doing like a 3-week quarantine and then you shoot. And I heard that extras are going to just be digitally now inputted in crazy things. I mean, it's just insane.
It's a new world as it relates to all that. And I think Tyler Perry has come up with a really interesting way to do it. Mm-hmm. Where I have some compassion though is like, what about the single mom who is whatever, a cinematographer or in the lighting department or in makeup or whatever position she's in, and she doesn't have that option to go in quarantine for 3 weeks, with a crew. I think the other thing you're going to see is like crews are going to inevitably get a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. So while that's not necessarily good for the industry as a whole, what it does do is if you're an independent filmmaker and you can keep your film sets to, let's say, under 20 or 30 people, your opportunities as it exists, given the demand for content and the ability to fly with less restrictions, is probably unlike ever before. There's even in a pandemic, or coming out the tail end of a pandemic, the opportunity is unlike any time ever before.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna jump to a whole other thing and just ask you a little bit about yourself and how you got into filmmaking and kind of what motivated you and what drives you to keep doing it.
Sure. Well, my story is I actually fell into it. I don't know how deep you want to get, but the semi-short version of it is I went to business management school in a city called Edmonton, and I always thought I was going to own a company. My uncle always told me, well, if you want to do well in your life, you got to own your own company. So I figured, I'd own something, I don't know, something corporate, had no idea really what it was. At the end of business management, I went and tried to sell security alarms, high-end security alarms for 2 months. I was about 18, 19 years old. I didn't sell a single security alarm, completely failed for a whole summer. Dejected, unsure what to do with my life, feeling that I was a complete failure. I went back to my school and just, saw were there any job postings or anything. And there was a posting to act in a film by the film and TV program that they had in there. I auditioned, I got the role. I didn't like the in front of the camera. I didn't like acting, but I loved what I saw behind the scenes. So I went back and I did 2 years of film production at that school. At the end, you had to do a 4-month unpaid practicum. And I did it with a very big TV commercial production company. At the end of that, they made me a producer because I worked hard, or they took pity on me or whatever. And I'd been producing since I was 23. I started in commercials and music videos, and then got into film and that sort of thing, and then into film finance. And it's just kind of gone from there.
And on that note, this is something that every actor, filmmaker, or anyone who's trying to make a movie always asks is, how do you get a film financed? What's the best approach to getting a film financed, especially, this time right now? And do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ways depending on what country you're in. If you're in Canada, there's various grants. And Canada has a lot of what I like to kind of call institutional filmmakers, which there's an upside and a downside. If they get the grants, they get to go make their films. If they don't get the grants, they don't necessarily know how to make a film by using other people's money, or how to get financing or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I think, the big thing is with regards to any film is you just don't give up. Like, it's a numbers game. If you yourself don't have the money to finance a film, what it usually takes is going out to people, friends, family, acquaintances, and trying to get the money and trying to get a good pitch in terms of getting that money. Usually that involves a lot of due diligence. Like, why is this film in fact going to sell, other than it's our passion project? Who stars in it? What is the end distribution game as it results in the film? And are there tax credits or anything like that? Like, you really want to be well-versed on how to get your investors' money back as much as you possibly can. Even with that, that's not a guarantee that all films succeed. Most don't. But you want to put investors in a scenario where it has the best odds of succeeding. So, the end result really is to get whatever amount of money you need for your film. May involve going out to 100 people. I read a story of the Duplass brothers, some big guys in Hollywood now, when they were starting out. I think they had to go to, I forget the number, but I thought it was in the hundreds to get their first bit of financing, to get their first film off the ground. And then they got better and better and better, so that it wouldn't take hundreds, it might take, dozens. And before long, it takes under 10. And before long, you have enough of an investor base that you can just go. The other thing in general I suggest as it relates to investment, never get investors for just one film, because one film is the lottery ticket. 3 films, chances are maybe one makes money, but getting an investors for just one film can at times be risky. We like to put investors as much as we can in a slate of films versus one, but sometimes that's just not an option. So you do put them in one. You just try and choose the best one.
Well, what I like about what you're saying is a lot of filmmakers, and even I'm guilty of this at times, is we're coming at it from complete passion. We forget that it's actually, if someone's putting in their money, they're taking a risk. You have to present it to them as a business. You don't have to present it to them as an entertainer. Right. And I think a lot of filmmakers come at it from the wrong angle. Like, hey, yeah, we got this great idea. We got these great actors who, we're pitching. At the end of the day, if someone's asking someone for $1 million+, you better have a clear-cut plan of action on how that $1 million is going to be paid back and more, and make it as safe as possible for them. So I like that you have a systematic approach. You kind of laid out, here are some key points. If you're going to approach people, you better tackle those points and make it as clear as possible for them. Otherwise, you're not going to get money. Just like any other investment.
It's really no different. I mean, film is, it's an art and it's a commodity to some extent. And if you don't have a really good plan of, how the film's going to sell and where it's going to get placed, like, we've all, as filmmakers, I think at one time or another, gotten investors for that passion project. And it inevitably, you fail because you haven't figured out where the end market is for that. Mm-hmm. You have this idea, well, a film under 250 grand can't fail. A film under 100 grand can't fail. A film under 50 grand can't fail. And it doesn't work that way. It actually is the opposite. You're almost better off raising more money, getting significant stars, getting the script to a beautiful position, because it all starts with the script, and then making sure you have that sales agent and making sure you have that distribution line planned out properly so that investors have the best chance to make their money back.
Something you once told me, and this is different, this is for actors, is that, you've seen so many auditions. You
Sure.
go to casting calls or you're casting a movie and you see all
Yeah.
these crazy auditions. And you once told me that 999 out of 1,000 auditions for the same role are identical. You almost couldn't tell the difference. And that if one stands out, even if it's not great, your bias is to remember that person and maybe go with that person. So I'd love a producer's input as someone who's seen all these auditions and been in there and been in the room with directors to give some real, let's say 3 really strong tips on what actors can do. And if one of those is being unique, like you told me in the past, whatever those things are, but I'd love to just hear your experiences watching those auditions. And you can just be brutally honest about
Sure.
most of them just suck or whatever it is. You can be totally honest and just giving some tips for actors that could really make a difference so they can put better quality work forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've sat through thousands of auditions probably at this point, and I don't enjoy the audition process. I find it is very redundant. Sometimes, you feel really bad for actors because there's certain things you could literally be the best looking actor with the best audition and not get the role. What's always stood out to me, and maybe it's my own personal bias, is certainly the contrarians always stand out. Like there was this one guy in Vancouver, I won't mention his name, but everybody would come in and audition, and then this guy would come in and he would do the opposite, like in a way that you just wouldn't even see it. And often he wouldn't necessarily get the roles, but you remembered him because he was so different and still very talented and very like he did his homework. He did his homework to make sure the
Yeah.
audition was good. But following the mentality of everyone else is not necessarily going to get you ahead. If everybody's doing the same thing, people aren't going to remember you. So I would say, the first bit of advice is probably take chances. I think that's a worthwhile thing. I think you can always tell when an actor has really done their homework. When they've really come to the table to really go harder than the other actors. So I think it's also putting in the work that's necessary, that there's layers to your performance, that there's subtext. Sometimes what you'll have is you'll have a really good looking actor or an actor that suits the role come in, but there's no depth to the performance. The performance is he knows the lines, he says them right. This is kind of how it could go on screen, but you can just tell there's no depth. I think conceivably depth comes from working on it, to a large degree. And I think, the other thing that always stands out, and it's really dumb and it may be my own personal bias, but somebody who's personable and is actually really nice in the room, you sometimes remember them too, versus somebody who just comes in, says their thing and leaves. If somebody is kind, if somebody's a little more, not overly talkative or anything like that, but they're just personable, I found for me, sometimes I've remembered that as well. Not that I'll necessarily give that person the role, but at least I know if I'm working with somebody, they're not a jerk. I'm not going to be dealing with somebody that's going to be very difficult. Like those are the things that stand out to me, probably in that order. And a director may give you a very different, like you even as a director, may have a very different take on that than me. But that's been my bias sitting through auditions.
No, I'd have to argue that, I'd have to agree with most of those points. For me, I can't really, I want to work with actors who are easy to work with. From a directorial standpoint, the number one thing for me that's important in the room, if I could give one tip to actors, and I'm an actor as well, and I think this is something that's been very important in my career, is the ability to take direction. A lot of actors will go in and they'll be like,
100%.
hey, can I
Yeah.
see it different? Can I see a change? Because my fear is you're going to show up on set, that's not the performance I need, and you're just stuck and you don't want to hear anything else, you don't want to do anything else. That's a nightmare for me. It's happened. I think it's happened even when we're working together where I'm trying to get a
All the
performance
time.
out of an actor and I'm like, they're not getting it. And I try and play games with them, whatever it takes to get them to that new place. I don't want to have to coach you. I want you to show up and be able to do what I need you to do. And so that would be my number one tip. Yeah, it would be able to take direction. Don't go in there and be so firm in what you're doing and so stuck that you can't change it. Just be grounded, be real, be present, and then the performance will come. So, but everything you said is right on point too. I would not want to work with an actor who comes in and has an attitude. And I definitely feel like
No.
99 out of 100 auditions, I'm like, wow, these are all the same. They're forgetful. And
It's
that really
so
stuck with me.
boring. Yeah, and I don't know. I ultimately don't know why that is. Like, I don't know if it's just most people are similar in how they read something and they just kind of go for it. But I think, people who take chances in any area of their life, if you want to get ahead in any area, it involves taking chances. And I think being the person that stands out, even if you do the worst audition ever, ideally you don't, but even if you do something that's so contrary to what you think, and if you have talent and if you have some depth to it, I think that'll stand out in most people's minds more than doing the exact same thing that everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I just made a video yesterday that touches on that point about success in general, where one of the number one factors, the number one determining factor is grit, but a big part of grit is being willing to take action, being willing to take risk. So that's exactly it. If you're willing to take a risk, you tend to stand out. You tend to be
In
different.
anything. Yeah, in anything.
How do you feel in terms of, with everything going on now in the future of filmmaking for an actor, do you think location matters? Do you think all these actors who have traditionally always wanted to go to LA or New York, I mean, even with the influx of what we're seeing in Georgia, I've worked so much in Georgia. Do you think it's important to be in any specific local market, or do you feel like it doesn't matter where you live? Most things are self-tape, and to just be where you're happy and then get the auditions that way?
It's a great question. I mean, so much needs to shake down from this scenario that we're in. Anything that I give you is going to be a guess, but if I had to guess, and we may look back on this and say, wow, what an idiot I was for guessing this because it's so opposite. But I think Hollywood is going to become very decentralized. I think Hollywood is starting to matter less and less. I think financing as it relates are coming from all different sources all around the world. If I had to give an actor any advice on where to be, it would really be where the talented people are. Like if you can associate yourself with a filmmaker or a group of filmmakers that are absurdly talented and even get small roles in those films, which lead up to big roles, that probably puts you further ahead than some random audition process in LA or some other city. If you're not a self-starter and all you want to do is just go and audition, I mean, for a while, probably places like Atlanta and LA and Georgia and Vancouver and Toronto are still going to be the hubs of things. But I think that's going to change a lot also based on regulations. Like,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a producer, health is very important, but there's different degrees that people believe, you can keep people very healthy while still doing a great film. I feel some of the restrictions go a little too far. I feel some of the restrictions go way too far. And I feel as long as I can test people on a daily level and the testing is accurate, I should be able to not fully socially distance on set and do stunts and do love scenes and do all the things that existed before. And if that means I have to go shoot in, some country that I've never shot in or some state that I've never shot in, I'm unfortunately not going to be the only producer thinking this way. Like there's going to be a lot of producers taking their work out of LA, which is going to probably be very restricted, and taking their work out of like New York and taking their work out of like Canada even, because it's going to be very restricted to places where you can actually safely, in our beliefs and maybe that country's beliefs, create the art.
Well, Georgia's already open. Florida's opened. I mean, Florida doesn't have great tax incentives, but Georgia does. Maybe Georgia will start seeing some influx in filming and some projects going there that wouldn't have otherwise gone there. But you're absolutely right. People will go where they can work. I mean, we've been seeing that. That's a bigger topic. That's not even about filmmaking or acting. That's people want to work, which is a good thing. And, people want to have their lives back. And this is, it's scary. There's a pandemic, but at the same time, regardless of how we feel about it, people will go back to work given the opportunity. And so we have to respect that, I feel, and understand that that's just the reality. That's what it is. And if there's an opportunity for people to film, like you said, let's say in Prague, producers will go there, actors will go there. Whatever the risk is, that's what they want to do. My personal stance is I believe in individual freedom. We can't stop people from doing that.
I agree.
So it's the end result. You're absolutely right, and I have to agree fully. I have a couple more questions here. I'm going to try and get through them quickly for you. But one big one, I think, just because of your background in film, if you could just give your 3 top tips for aspiring filmmakers. And
Sure.
Yeah.
3 top tips. Number one, it starts with the script. If your script is garbage, your film's garbage, no exceptions. There will never be an exception unless, somehow you have a godlike director on set who is going to rewrite the hell out of it, and an editor that's magnificent. Maybe you come away with something that just kind of works. Like there's been a few films that somehow they work. Like Apocalypse Now seems like it was a total gong show, in terms of everything in every way. And but they came out with something magnificent. I think largely because the director is so talented. But your easier route is start out with a great script, and don't be married to anything that you have to like. If you have to change the script to make it great, don't go into production until it's great. And I don't mean good, I mean great. Like do great work. One great film is worth 1,000 garbage films. Your name will be attached to that, for the rest of your life. And I can say I've done some garbage films, sadly, and I can also say I've done some great films. And the great films feel so much better in so many ways than the garbage films. So, one thing I would say is starting with the script. The second thing I'd say is surround yourself with great people and start at the top. Like if you have a wish list of who you want to work with, don't start at the bottom. Like, oh, I can get this cinematographer who's local, who's done wedding videos. No, go to the best guy in the city and ask him. And if he says no, go to the second best and third best and fourth best. And probably by the time you get down that list, you're pretty good at pitching, and somebody may say yes, because working with extraordinarily talented people who are probably more talented than you as a person when you're starting out, will only elevate your game, that much higher. And that makes a huge difference. And then the third thing I would say is realize that as much as it's an art, regardless of what position you're in, you have to make money. Every time you don't make money on a film, you're climbing a hill that's twice as high, that keeps getting double as high to climb again. So your first film doesn't make money. Okay, well, to raise money for the second is now twice as hard. That one doesn't make money. Now it's like 4 times as, it just keeps getting exponentially harder, where if you at least do the right things and you make a great film and it makes money, even modest money, because film investors, don't necessarily think that they're going to be, absurdly rich. Some do, but don't necessarily think that they're going to be absurdly rich. It just makes it easier and easier each time after that. So I think it's, part of that is also choosing the right project, but do your due diligence on anything. I think if you do those 3 things, you'll come away with great films that profit, and it'll be easier for you to continue on your journey.
That was awesome. Those are amazing tips. Next question. Who's your favorite person that you've worked with? And attached to that, what would you say the number one quality you see in all these successful people is?
Oh man, my favorite person I've worked with, like from an acting level, from a directing level, from a just being around them level. Like there's so many.
Favorite actor and favorite director.
Favorite actor. I really, really respect the performance of Maggie Gyllenhaal in Kindergarten Teacher. And I also really respect the performance of Brian Dennehy in Driveways. And
congrats on that, by the way. That film got a ton of positive reception.
It's insane. Critics 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is the reviewing site, which doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. It's been like the best film of the year so far, halfway in the year. Mind you, a year that hasn't had we've had as many films, but not as many films going into production. So I'm extraordinarily proud of that. But I think those two, and Jamie Bell in Skin, like it's so hard because everything becomes your baby, and the performances are so deep and so nuanced, and they're just such kind, good people, like legitimately good. The funny thing is, like, I think there's, not to go on a tangent, but I have to say this. There's this idea out there that A-list actors are jerks or they're not nice. It's the opposite. They are like absolutely some of the nicest people you can meet with. Some of the B and C level aren't so nice. Some. But the A-listers we've worked with are phenomenal people and just want to create great craft. And then if you're talking about directors, oh man, I mean, I would say all 3 of those too. Sarah Colangelo is an incredible director. Andrew On of Driveways, Guy Natif is incredible. Like, we've been so lucky to work with some of the directors that we've worked with, and the talent level is absurd. And, even working with your talent level is crazy too. Like, I've been so spoiled by working with great people who make me look like I know what I'm doing. that it's mind blowing. I actually look smart because I work with more talented people than myself. So it elevates me.
As you previously said, that was one of your main tips. Would you say that there was one consistent quality? You said that they're all really easy to work with and really kind people. Is that one quality you've noticed, or is there some kind of driving trait that you think attributes to that kind of success or that kind of talent that's a character trait that you notice consistently in people who do well? You kind of touched on it earlier. Maybe people are risk takers as a trait, but maybe there's some other
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I think if you look at all of those actors, and I think if you look at successful actors or anybody in any position, you literally don't do it for the money. You do it because the content is amazing, the script is amazing. You're creating something that has lasting value. Um, I think the people that chase money, and there's a lot, and there's nothing wrong with chasing money. You should be able to make as much money in my mind as you want to, and that's a great thing to go after. But I'm still a big believer, maybe naively, maybe not. Still a big believer that you can make a lot of money by doing very compelling content that tells great stories, that's still very commercial. And I think audiences want that more than anything. I feel like the actors that are getting ahead now and directors and producers and all that sort of stuff, they're chasing meaning more than they're chasing money. And they're chasing like creating something of value more than they're chasing money, because that comes around and equals money. In the end, that's what brings in the money now.
So the number one determining factor for success that you've noticed consistent in people is passion, is drive to create value through passion.
Well, I think it's passion, but then I think it's also taste. Like, so for instance, if I can bring up an actor, you can choose to bleep this out if you want to or not. My favorite actor growing up and through most of my life was Johnny Depp. I think he's an incredible actor. I think he's at a talent level that almost nobody exists at. And yet I feel like the last, let's say, 5 years, he's chosen content that's been, well, to be very kind, significantly beneath him. And then if you look at other actors, whoever you want to look at, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hardy, not that they've done flawless movies, but I feel like they've chosen small movies with great messages where they're great in them. And, whether Johnny has more talent or doesn't have more talent, I think their taste has been significantly better, and their upswing as actors is a higher trajectory. Um, and I feel like you've got to choose, you got to pick your battles. I mean, you got to do some things for money, yes, obviously, but you also have to do some things that are just going to be great with great people that you're not going to get paid necessarily what you're worth. And all three of those actors that I mentioned, Jamie Bell, Brian Dennehy, um, uh,
Maggie
Maggie
Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal, all did that, working for significantly less because they believed in a project. And that, to me, that's a real actor. Like, that is the real deal. Not that you do that every time, but that is the real deal of why we all got into this industry. Most of us didn't get in to become, absurdly rich. It works out that way sometimes, but it's not why most, I don't think, get into the industry.
Yeah, well, it paid off for them. I mean, one of those films, Skin, won an Oscar, the short.
Yeah, the short did. Yeah.
So tailoring off of that is amazing into a feature. And then Maggie Gyllenhaal, didn't she win at Sundance? Or she?
Yeah, I mean, well, the film won the Best Director award at Sundance, which is one of the three top awards at Sundance.
Yeah.
Skin won the Critics' Choice Award at Toronto Film Festival. Driveways is on every critic's list right now and has been in major, major film festivals. And I think, as you do things as a labor of love, even if they're fully commercial projects, even if they're giant action films, if you do them as a labor of love and you really get into the scripting and make the scripts great, not just vapid, I also think you make more money that way. I mean, what's the difference between, James Cameron, let's say, and some of the other directors who do lesser things in the same genre? James Cameron just cares more about story. James Cameron cares more about the details. And James Cameron's movies make a lot of money, but they have themes and they have good scripts. And he's done extremely well by not being vapid.
Amazing. Yeah. That was the last question. So thank you. Thank you I really hope people watch this all the way through to the end. If you did like the interview, like and subscribe. I hope to do a lot more interviews. You've been incredibly helpful, Gabe. Even just talking now, there's a lot of input I took because we haven't had a conversation like this in a long
Right.
time. So it's
Oh,
been
wow.
really
Yeah.
helpful.
No,
So thank
happy
you so much.
to. Thanks for having me.
All right.
All right.
Signing off.
See ya.